Hello, hello. Welcome to Podcasting Q&A with me. I'm Virginia Elder, the owner of Podcast Abundance and the host of Podcasting for Financial Professionals. So, if you happen to be joining live today, you have the opportunity to submit a question in the chat right below where you're seeing this post and ask me any question about podcasting. And my primary focus as a podcast strategist and podcast manager for my clients is to help them actually capture the right listeners, right? So, ideal clients that you would want to work with in your business and make sure those are the people we are attracting to listen to your show. And then we're nurturing those people by continuing to answer questions that they have, solve problems that they are facing, and then eventually convert those listeners into email subscribers and clients within the business. So, again, if you're joining me live, I really, really appreciate it. Pop your questions in the chat below wherever you're seeing this video. I do have a few questions that were submitted ahead of time. And so we're going to start going through those. Now, just real quick off the top, most of my clients are financial professionals. My podcast is called Podcasting for Financial Professionals. It's like really clear who it serves, who it's for, and what the point of it is, right? So that would be tip number one. I get questions all the time about like, how come my show isn't, gaining traction right now, or I don't have the listeners that I thought I would, a year later, only 20 people still listen to my show each week. And most of the time when I look at a show for a podcast audit or we're doing strategy sessions together, one of the big things is your show title. That is the number one way that someone is going to discover your show is if your title is named really clearly that indicates who the show is for and what the show is about. Now, I've talked to many, many, many people who are dreaming of hosting their own show one day. And they are multifaceted individuals, as are we all, right? They have interests in, running, fishing, golf. Of course, there's some business in there. I've heard a lot about business acquisitions lately. So, I want to talk to people about that. And there's so many interesting people that I have connections to, and I just want to interview them all. And between the show title and the narrowed topics that you would talk about, those are the ways that you attract the right people that you want to work with you. So it's not going to be beneficial for your business to launch a show that's called A Little About Everything and to discuss topics and do interviews that are all over the map. Like I said, fishing, golf, this, that, business acquisitions, finance, like everything. Most people do not share that wide array of interests with you exactly in an aligned way. And so when your show seems random like that, people check in for maybe the one thing that they discovered you for, thought it was interesting, but ultimately didn't think that it's worth their time every single week, right? So when you are a business owner, it's really, really important that your show title and all the topics you talk about pertain to guiding people into your business. On your business podcast is probably not the best place to talk about gardening, right? I love gardening, but I don't talk about it on my show, Podcasting for Financial Professionals. Clearly, we're talking about podcasting on that show. So, that is like my number one tip. And the number one thing that I see when we're doing audits and strategy sessions is that just from the top, the show name and the group of topics that you're covering within your show have to be targeted to where if people are interested in those things, they are your ideal client. So rather than this broad array of topics, you want to be talking about, for example, like a financial professional might be, let's say it's a CPA. So, like the top tax deductions that business owners miss, the easiest way to get organized before tax time, various tax exemptions that different types of people might qualify for, right? Some strategies and tips of something we can think about as we're entering the year of ways we could do things within our business that could qualify us for a certain exemption, deduction, how we're thinking about reflecting our income for the business. Do we want the business to reflect as really profitable because we are leading up to an exit? Well, we're going to pay more taxes, if that's the goal, right? Because we're reflecting that profit. But maybe you're on the flip side and you want to do everything you can to reduce the profit that your business is showing. And so in that case, we're doing all kinds of things to make that work. And so all of those topics have to do with business finance, tax strategy, taxes, the way your books are done, the way you stay organized with your finances for your business. I mean, those are targeted CPA topics that would be attracting the right listeners. And if I heard, this great show each week that told me tips that I could implement within my business to, um, have a better tax strategy around my business income, that would be a great selling point for that person to become my CPA, right? So that's how I want you to think about creating your show for your business. So, again, if you're joining us live, thank you so, so much. This is only broadcast on LinkedIn, YouTube, and Facebook. And again, we are live. We're accepting questions in the chat below. So make sure you pop them in there if you have any questions about podcasting for your business. So let's talk about, in general, I get some form of this question often. How do I grow my podcast audience? So, you know, no matter how you phrase it, essentially what you're looking for when you talk about podcast growth is more listeners, more downloads. So, my initial pushback to that question is, okay, you want more visibility. What is your goal with that visibility? Is it because you want more clients? Or is it just because you want, like, your, numbers to go up as far as downloads and all that, and it's like a vanity thing, like, "Oh, I really want 10,000 listens every month," or whatever it is. But in general, growth for a podcast is largely dependent upon your title, like we talked about earlier, your narrowed topics for your business so that you are attracting the right people, and then when you speak on each topic, that episode title is really, really important as far as for like SEO and search purposes. You want someone to be able to type in a question or a phrase that means the question that they're thinking and stumble upon your episode. So if I'm thinking, go back to the CPA example, if I'm thinking I want some tax exemption tips for my business and like what can I do this year to qualify for more exemptions, I might be typing in, business tax strategy for business, right? Or tax, yeah, something like that. And so if that phrase or something similar based on keywords, and you could use AI for this, is in the title of that episode, even if your show title is different, that's going to help listeners stumble upon your episode, right? And through that, then they can learn, oh, this is, a CPA, they serve my type of business, service providers, and then, I can go down the rabbit hole from there. The other piece that's really helpful, I kind of hinted at it there, is that if it's really, really clear in the beginning part of your episode and in your show notes and titles who your show is for. Is it for service providers? Is it for product manufacturers? Is it for roofers and plumbers? Like who do you serve in your business? And make it really clear throughout your show notes, throughout your episode. Mention it in the intro, the first 30 seconds of your episode. These don't seem like growth hacks. They seem like topic and structure tips for your podcast. But what they really do is capture someone because they hear, oh, that's me. This show is meant for me. This person is speaking directly to me. And then that's how they will kind of latch on and decide to listen to the full episode. So growth, is largely dependent upon the way you're structuring your episodes, your titles, your topics, all of those things. But then, of course, you do have like social media reels and YouTube shorts. Those are extremely popular right now, like practically a requirement if you have a podcast, if you're trying to grow your audience, if you're trying to gain any kind of traction. People kind of forget that you announced that you had a show or that you made a post about this guest or that person or this topic or whatever. They need a reminder constantly about the topics you talk about your expertise. And the more they see your face on social media and that you're getting that visibility, then they're reminded, oh yeah, this person has a podcast. I've been meaning to listen. Let me, pop over to my podcast app and like find their show finally. And that's the other thing too. People don't jump in immediately just because you announced that you launched a new show. They might not even jump in by episode 50. But the more you are posting on socials and you have YouTube shorts, you have a newsletter, you have different things that you're putting out there, even lives like this, you can talk about, oh, hey, by the way, if you want more like this, hop over to my podcast, Podcasting for Financial Professionals, right? And you can just do that quick call to action, reminding people that you have a show that serves what they need, right? Now, that's kind of like the organic visibility route, stories, reels, YouTube shorts, social media posts in general. There are also a few low cost, low lift advertising platforms where you can pay less than 500 bucks and do like a short little campaign on a specific podcast app or through a specific platform where you'll see a boost in listenership for that campaign period. It could be 10 days, it could be a month, whatever, depending on which platform you choose. I don't manage advertising campaigns for folks unless they specifically ask. And, we have an entire conversation about that. Most of the time, we are focused on growth in this organic way. And most of the time, I find that we aren't posting consistently on social media or the posts that are going up aren't value driven. It's just like, hey, here's a new episode this week. And if you go through their feed, it's like, new episode this week, new episode this week, new episode this week. Like those posts do not attract people. But if your posts add value and give people tactical advice just within the reel or the carousel, the caption right then and there, that's attractive, right? Then they're thinking, oh my gosh, this was so amazing. And I loved this post. Man, if I listen to this whole podcast episode that she's talking about, I'm going to get, even more on this, right? And that's how you want them to view your social media. You don't want it just to be like a constant announcement of all the things that you're publishing. You want it to dive into those topics and unpack them and give the advice, give the tips, give the value right there, and that will attract folks in. A lot of times I see they're not posting on social media or it's not value driven. Most of the time, I'm seeing that the podcast is not being fed into the business's website. There's not a podcast tab, or if there is, when you click on it, that takes you to a third party platform. Typically, the podcast host's account where all the episodes are posted. And so what that does is that you aren't getting that traffic. If I went to your website, clicked on the little podcast tab, and then it took me off of your website onto where your podcast is hosted, or like an app or Apple or just anything like that, you booted me out of your website. So maybe I was just gonna skim over your podcast, but I actually really wanted to click in and look at your services or look at other things as well. But you made me exit, right? So, what we want to do is have the show feeding to your business's website and for there to be like a blog post style place on your website where every episode is being logged essentially as a blog post. There are plugins that do this. This is something that we work with our clients' IT department or web designer or whoever to make sure that this happens. I can make recommendations for the different plugins that I use that we've used on clients' sites in the past. And what that does is it starts to make your website appear that it's generating content week after week because every time you publish a podcast episode, it also goes up there, right? And then it also is feeding your website keywords, things that you actually say and talk about. And when people, kind of hunt you down and check things out, they get to stay on your website, giving them the opportunity to check out services, to fill out your contact form, to book a call, whatever it is that you want to do or want them to do. So, growth is multifaceted, multi-layered, and typically I'm looking at like what is the missing link in this potential client's journey. So, assuming, from a top level, the title of the show is bang on point. The topics and episode titles look good. They look like some things that this ideal client would search. That's when we start diving even deeper. Like, is there a call to action in every episode? Are the show notes full and robust, or are they like two sentences? Is there value given in the show notes? Are these episodes, clips, captions, carousels, all these things, are they being posted on social media? Is the social media being utilized, or is it just they create an account but they hardly ever post on it? So that's like real estate that is just not being used, right? So the very first steps before we spend advertising money for forced growth, we want to make sure that we are really using every platform that we need. And that's not that you have to be on all social media, right? But the ones that where your ideal clients hang out, you want to be posting consistently about your show and adding value within those posts on all of those platforms. Then, we're looking over at the website. What's the situation? What's the connection from the podcast to your website? On the podcast, are you talking about this specific page? Maybe you've made a redirect. So I've done this with my show and I advise clients to do this. I have podcastingforfinancialprofessionals.com. However, my business name is Podcast Abundance. I own podcastabundance.com. All of my business stuff, services, ways to work with me, book a call buttons, all that stuff is at podcastabundance.com. So for my podcast tab, there is a redirect that's been created where people can type in podcastingforfinancialprofessionals.com because that is my show name, and they will be redirected to my business website podcast page. And it's podcastabundance.com slash podcasting for financial professionals. And that way, I've got the show title.com and that lands them on my business website. So I could say either one, but if someone discovers me and is like searching podcasting for financial professionals, they will land on my business website. I don't want them landing on a completely separate website. Now, sometimes, depending on your profession, we have to do some interesting things in regards to compliance. And maybe your RIA won't let you, have this outside business activity being funneled to your business website, right? So, in some cases, we will work with compliance and do something a little differently. And sometimes we have to craft like some kind of custom plan there. But in general, I want your show to lead people to your services. So I'm looking at, as far as growth is concerned, typically when you say you want podcast growth, it's because you want business growth. You want your email list to grow. You want more people to attend your webinars. You want more people to book your services. You want more people to book sales calls with you or discovery calls with you, right? So growth is a broad topic, and we look at a lot of organic things within that growth spectrum. And what I'm really trying to do is connect discover to listener to client. And I'm going through the steps of, if I don't know who you are, what would I type in that would land me on your show? What would capture my attention and make me be a weekly listener of your show? And then when I'm ready, are all the pieces in place for me to be able to click through and do the thing, right? To download the lead magnet, to book a call with you, to find your services and discover pricing or whatever it is where you want to lead people. So, for some of my clients, and for most of my clients, it is a lead magnet. And that lead magnet is often some type of download, a free spreadsheet of some sort. That's popular in the finance space. But the thing that's been working great lately is the video series. So whether it's a multi-step video series that they're being delivered via email, or if it's just a single video that they get to watch kind of on demand style that guides them, through some type of problem, right? So the video lead magnet has been like the number one thing that's been working lately. So I am seeing there are a couple people joining us live. Thank you so, so much for being here. Instead of me just jabbering away here, I do have some questions that were submitted before the stream started. So I'm going through answering those. But if you have podcasting questions that you want to submit in the chat, wherever you're joining from, go ahead and do that. And I'll see them and be able to respond to you live. How exciting, right? Okay. So touching back on growth. Another big thing that I see that is kind of like wasted real estate. It's like you own the space, but you're not using it, is in the show notes category, right? So that's the episode description that goes below every single podcast episode. Now, most people don't realize that you have up to 4,000 characters you can use within that space. That is a lot of words. I mean, that is an entire blog post, right? And I'm not saying that you need to use all 4,000 characters, but knowing that the average podcaster is only using 250 characters on average for their show notes, that right there tells you that you have a big opportunity that if you even put the most robust description you could possibly come up with and it was 2000 characters, you are doing 10 times what the average show is producing as far as show notes goes. 10 times better. That's amazing. Now, the exciting part there is that when you use the majority of that allowed character space in your descriptions, think SEO immediately, right? You have so much opportunity to put keywords, key phrases. You can even separate the sections out so it's like really readable, skimmable. You can do bullet points and timestamps. You can put titles above each small paragraph. There's so much you can do to help your potential listener and help that potential reader. Sure, I don't think people just hang out in the show notes and read the entire thing. No, I know they're skimming it. We all know that because that's how we use podcast show notes, right? But you never know which key phrase or which paragraph or bullet point or whatever is going to catch their eye because it's what they wanted of why they clicked on that episode. So you want to use as much space as you can that's allowed in the show notes to describe your episode, to provide value. And here's the key for business owners to give them the next step. So, tell them about how to download your framework. Tell them how to sign up for your next event, workshop, webinar, whatever it is. And, guide them forward. Don't just end the episode, leave them hanging, and there's no next step. There should always be an instruction and a link in your show notes so that people can take the next step with you if and when they're ready, because you never know who and when and at what point in their customer journey they're going to discover your show. Occasionally someone who is ready to buy today, who's like desperately searching for you, is going to stumble upon your show that morning during their run. And I mean, you would be so sore if you knew that and did not provide some kind of link or next step instruction in the show notes for that person. So that's how you have to think about every set of show notes. So, let's see. All right, we're about 27 minutes in. We do need to wrap it up here. We answered multiple questions about titles, descriptions, topics. I even gave you some examples about how to, link your show over to your website so that we're really guiding listeners into the business. There are so many more tips and tricks. We did not get any live questions today. That's okay. I still feel like this was packed with value. So if you're here, thank you so, so much for watching. If not, you can catch the next live. It's going to be on May 19th. Same situation, just like this, live on Facebook, YouTube, and LinkedIn. If you are looking for like a more structured how to deep dive instruction about how to make your podcast work for your business and how to really attract those listeners in as leads, I want to invite you to my webinar. It is on May 20th. And I will pop the registration link below this broadcast. You'll see several links inviting you over the next few weeks on my socials. So make sure that you're following me. And you can always DM me as well. Like send me a direct message and say, hey, your webinar sounded really interesting. Send me the link, right? But that webinar is your next step with me. I will take you through very specific structure session as far as like strategy goes of how to make sure your show is attracting the right people converting those leads, and then what to do with them after they have signed up and they're like within your business ecosystem. Because people don't always buy right away, right? Like they want something free, they want to hang out, they want to keep getting your emails and, listening to more episodes, and eventually they buy. So, I will be walking you through that on May 20th. That is a private webinar. You must register. Again, live is going to be on the 19th. You can show up just like this, ask me your questions. But if you want that, kind of one on one feel where I'm really guiding you through, almost like you're one of my strategy session clients, then you're going to want to join that private webinar on May 20th. So I'll drop the link below, but thank you for being here. If you have any questions and you want them answered live on the next Q&A, again, that's May 19th, go ahead and submit your questions to me. You can DM or pop them below the chat here, and I will save them for the next live. Thank you so much for being here with me today.